Jace's spacecraft touched down on the soft, glowing soil of Eloria, the alien world far from Earth. It wasn't the first time Jace had visited an alien planet, but this one was unlike any other. His mission was simple: explore the alien culture and return home with valuable data for Earth's research. But as his feet hit the ground, Jace had the strange feeling that this mission would be different. His eyes scanned the landscape, lush green forests that glowed with bioluminescent flowers, towering trees, and shimmering rivers. The air smelled sweet, fresh, like the scent of 1,000 flowers blooming at once. Before him stood an enormous structure, what the Elorians called a gathering place. It resembled a palace, but with intricate designs and shapes that Jace couldn't quite identify. The architecture was both beautiful and alien, stretching upward like some organic creature reaching for the sky. As he took a step closer, Jace felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear but from awe. His mission was to connect with the Elorians and learn from them, but the moment his boots hit Eloria's ground, he felt like he had stepped into a dream, a place where reality and fantasy blurred. Jace's guide, an Elorian named Naren, led him deeper into the palace grounds. The Elorians were a peaceful species, one that had mastered technology beyond Earth's wildest imagination. They didn't use weapons. Instead, they relied on intelligence, empathy, and their unmatched ability to communicate telepathically. Jace had heard about their advanced culture, their natural harmony with the environment, but nothing could have prepared him for the awe he felt being surrounded by it. As Naren spoke, his voice was like a soothing melody. "You will meet Princess Liara soon. She will welcome you to Eloria." The name struck Jace's ear like a bell. Princess Liara, the royal figure he was about to meet. He hadn't expected her to be involved with his mission, but he couldn't deny a strange curiosity about her. She was said to be beautiful, even by Elorian standards. But Jace wasn't concerned with beauty. His focus was on learning, on the culture, the science. And yet, a part of him was already wondering what this mysterious princess might be like. After a long walk, they entered a large chamber where the princess was waiting. She stood near the window, gazing out at the forest below. The light from the bioluminescent flowers bathed her in a soft glow. Her skin was silver, almost metallic in its smoothness, with subtle veins of violet running through it. Her eyes were a deep, glowing violet, and they seemed to shimmer as if reflecting the stars above. She turned as they approached, and Jace couldn't help but be captivated by her presence. Her beauty was otherworldly, but there was something more, something that seemed to emanate from within. She held herself with such grace, as if she were made of something more delicate than flesh and bone. "Welcome to Eloria, human," she said, her voice soft but commanding. Her words weren't spoken, not exactly. They reached Jace's mind, clear and direct, bypassing his ears entirely. Her telepathic abilities were as strong as the legends said. Jace stood still for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't accustomed to hearing voices in his head, but he quickly regained his composure. He cleared his throat and said, "Thank you for having me, Princess Liara. It's an honor to be here." The princess tilted her head slightly, a curious expression on her face. "Your words are strange," she remarked, "but your meaning is clear." Jace could feel the amusement in her voice. It was as though she had just noticed how out of place he was in this foreign world. He tried to smile, but his nerves were getting the best of him. This was a first contact, and he had no idea what he was supposed to say or do. "So tell me, human," Liara continued, her tone playful now. "What brings you to our peaceful world? Do you seek knowledge, or do you seek something more?" Jace was caught off guard by the question. He wasn't sure how to answer. His mission was to study the Elorians, their culture, and their technologies, but he hadn't expected the princess to take such an interest in his intentions. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I seek knowledge, princess. I want to understand your people, your way of life. I want to bring that knowledge back to Earth." Liara studied him for a moment, her violet eyes scanning him as though she were reading his thoughts. "Earth," she murmured softly. "I've heard of it. A world far away, filled with so much potential, yet so much conflict." Jace felt a pang of discomfort at the mention of Earth's troubled history. He knew it wasn't the best reputation Earth had earned in the galaxy, but he didn't want to dwell on that. He wanted to focus on the present, on the opportunity to learn from the Elorians. "I do not wish to focus on the past," he said, trying to steer the conversation in a new direction. "I want to understand your people and your future." Liara's gaze softened. Our future is one of peace, she said. We have lived for thousands of years without war, without conflict. We cherish knowledge and harmony above all else. Her words were calming, and Jace felt himself relax. It was hard not to be enchanted by her presence, her serene confidence. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, graceful, intelligent, and full of wisdom. Then, as if sensing his thoughts, Liara's lips curled into a slight smile. "But perhaps you are not here for just knowledge," she said playfully, her telepathic voice filling his mind once more. "Perhaps you are here to experience something else." Jace blinked, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" he asked. Liara's smile deepened. "Something more personal." She took a step closer, her silver skin shimmering in the dim light. "Something that connects us beyond knowledge." Jace could feel his heart rate quicken. Was she suggesting something? The telepathic connection between them seemed to grow stronger, more intimate, but Jace couldn't quite place what was happening. He cleared his throat again, trying to maintain his composure. I'm not sure I understand, Princess." Liara's expression softened, and she reached out, her hand lightly brushing his arm. Jace's breath caught in his throat at the contact. There was a warmth in her touch, an energy that seemed to course through him. For a brief moment, he felt a strange connection to her, something that went beyond his understanding of alien cultures, beyond the knowledge he had come to gain. Before he could respond, Liara turned away, breaking the connection. She faced the window again, her posture still graceful, as though nothing had happened. "Come, human, there is much to see in Eloria," she said, her voice now calm and distant. Jace stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what had just transpired. His heart was racing, but he wasn't sure why. Had he imagined the tension between them, or had something more happened? He couldn't shake the feeling that his visit to Eloria was going to lead him down a path he hadn't expected, one that involved not just knowledge, but something deeper, something far more personal. As he followed Liara out of the chamber, Jace couldn't help but wonder if this mission was about more than just learning about the Elorians. He had no idea what the future held, but he couldn't deny that the connection between him and the princess was something he couldn't ignore. The sun had set on Eloria, casting long shadows across the city. The bioluminescent flowers in the palace gardens glowed softly, creating a peaceful, serene atmosphere. Jace walked beside Princess Liara, his mind still racing from their earlier interaction. The mysterious connection he felt was unlike anything he had experienced before. It wasn't just the beautiful surroundings or the advanced technology of Eloria. It was something deeper, something that seemed to link them together in ways he couldn't quite explain. As they walked through the royal gardens, Liara's presence was soothing, yet it left him with an unsettling sense of wonder. She was so calm, so graceful, her silver skin gleaming in the soft light of the flowers. Her violet eyes seemed to see through him, as though she understood every thought before he could even speak it. "So, Jace," Liara's voice broke the silence, her telepathic words once again entering his mind. "What do you think of Eloria? Does it live up to your expectations?" Jace hesitated, still processing everything he had seen. The beauty of the planet was overwhelming, but there was something more to it, something that went beyond the glowing trees and shining rivers. It was the way the Elorians seemed to move through life with such harmony, such ease. There was no conflict, no strife. Everything seemed in perfect balance. "It's amazing," Jace finally replied. "I never imagined anything like this, the technology, the way you live. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's peaceful." Liara smiled at him, her lips curving upward in a way that made her look both beautiful and wise. "Peace is something we have learned to cherish. We have spent centuries learning how to live in harmony with each other and with the environment around us. It hasn't always been easy, but it is the path we have chosen." Jace couldn't help but wonder what that path looked like for her, the Princess of Eloria. She had the weight of an entire world on her shoulders, the responsibility of her people's future resting in her hands. Yet there was an ease about her, a serenity that made everything seem effortless. "I can't imagine what that must be like," Jace said, his voice soft. "Back on Earth, things are different. We've had wars, conflicts. We're still trying to find peace. I've heard about Eloria's history, how your people have managed to avoid all of that. But how do you do it? How do you maintain this balance?" Liara stopped walking and turned to face him. Her violet eyes met his with a depth that felt almost overwhelming. "It's not easy," she said. "It takes effort, it takes understanding, but most of all it takes a willingness to change. to let go of old ways and embrace new ideas, to put the needs of the collective before the desires of the individual. Jace thought about her words. On Earth, people often struggled to put others before themselves. There was so much greed, so much conflict. The idea of a society that worked together for the greater good was something he had never truly experienced. But here on Eloria, it seemed so natural, so ingrained in the culture. That sounds incredible, Jace said, his voice tinged with awe. But if it's so perfect here, why is it that I'm the first human to come here? Why haven't you shared your knowledge with the rest of the galaxy? Liara's expression softened. That is a question that has been asked many times, Jace. We have kept ourselves hidden for centuries, observing other worlds from afar. It's not that we don't want to share what we know, it's that we have seen the damage that comes from outside interference. We've watched as other civilizations destroyed themselves, unable to see the harm they were causing. We didn't want to risk that happening to Eloria. Jace was quiet for a moment, reflecting on her words. He had heard stories of civilizations that had fallen to their own hubris, planets destroyed by greed, by war, by the thirst for power. The idea that Eloria had stayed hidden to protect itself made sense, but it also felt isolating. But don't you want to help others? Jace asked, his voice gentle. Don't you want to share what you've learned, help other civilizations avoid the mistakes you've made? Liara looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes filled with an intensity he had never seen before. We do, Jace, we do want to help, but the time must be right. There must be a willingness on both sides. Our knowledge cannot be forced upon anyone. It must be shared with those who are ready to embrace it, not those who would use it to conquer or control. Jace nodded, understanding the weight of her words. It made sense, but it also left him with a feeling of helplessness. How could the galaxy ever be ready for such a shift? How could Earth, his home, ever be ready for the kind of peace that Eloria had achieved? As they continued their walk, Liara remained deep in thought, her hand lightly brushing the petals of a nearby flower. Jace couldn't help but watch her, captivated by her beauty, her grace. But there was something more to her than just her appearance. There was a wisdom in her eyes, a depth to her soul that drew him in. For a moment, the connection between them felt so strong that it almost overwhelmed him. It was as though their minds were connected, as though she could see straight into his heart, into his very thoughts. And in that moment, Jace realized something he had been trying to ignore. He was falling for her. Falling for Princess Liara, the alien princess from a distant world. He had known it was possible to feel attraction for someone from another planet, but this went beyond physical attraction. There was something deeper, something more powerful, something that pulled him to her in ways he couldn't explain. Liara turned to him as though sensing his thoughts. Jace, she said softly, her telepathic voice filling his mind once more, I know what you are thinking, but know this, our connection is not just physical, it is something more. We are bound by something deeper than you can understand. Jace felt a shock run through him at her words. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? Was there something between them, something more than just a fleeting connection? But before he could respond, a soft hum filled the air, drawing both of their attention. The sound came from the direction of the palace, and it was growing louder by the second. Liara's expression shifted from calm to alert. It seems we have company, she said, her voice hardening. Jace's heart began to race. What was happening? Who could be arriving at this hour? And why did Liara seem so tense? They hurried back toward the palace, their pace quickening as the humming sound grew louder. The light from the bioluminescent flowers flickered, as if responding to the change in the atmosphere. As they reached the entrance, Jace could see the silhouettes of several Elorian guards standing at attention, their weapons at the ready. What's going on? Jace asked, his voice laced with concern. Liara's eyes narrowed. We are under threat, she said, her voice cold. It seems our peace is about to be tested. Jace's pulse quickened. He had no idea what was happening, but he could tell that this was no small matter. Something serious was going on, and he had no idea how he was going to help, or even if he could. As they entered the palace, Liara's hand lightly brushed his arm, a gesture that felt strangely intimate. Stay close, Jace. Whatever happens, I need you to trust me. Jace nodded, his mind racing. Trust, he had to trust her. But with so many unknowns, he wasn't sure where this journey would take him, or if he was ready for the challenges that lay ahead. The tension in the palace was palpable, and Jace could feel it in the air as he walked beside Liara. The bioluminescent lights that usually bathed the corridors in soft, calming hues flickered sporadically, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Liara walked ahead, her posture straight and confident, but Jace could see the faintest tremor in her hands. Even though she held herself with the grace and composure of royalty, something had shifted in her. The peaceful world of Eloria that he had come to admire was now under threat. Jace followed her down the long hallway toward the war room. It was the first time he had seen the inner workings of Eloria's defense system. He had assumed the planet was entirely peaceful, with no need for military strength. But now, as they entered the room, it was clear that the Elorians were prepared for any threat, even if it was rare. Inside the room, several high-ranking Elorian officials were gathered around a large holographic map. The map projected a three-dimensional view of Eloria and its surrounding star systems, with blinking red dots indicating areas of concern. Jace noticed the intensity in the air as the officials discussed the situation in hushed tones, their voices barely audible as they spoke in their native language. Liara approached the table, and the room fell silent. Everyone turned to her, and Jace could see the respect in their eyes as she stepped forward to take her place at the head of the table. She was no longer the serene, graceful princess he had met earlier. In this moment, she was the leader of her people, and the weight of her responsibility was clear. "We are being attacked," Liara's voice rang out, calm but unwavering. "An enemy faction from the neighboring star system is approaching. They seek to capture me, and with it our knowledge." Jace's heart raced. He hadn't expected this. He had come to Eloria expecting peace and harmony, not war. But now, standing in the war room, the reality of the situation hit him hard. "Who are they?" Jace asked, his voice tense. Liara's eyes flicked to him, her violet gaze piercing through him as though she were seeing into his very soul. "They are the Zelvorians," she replied, "a militaristic faction that has long sought to dominate the galaxy. They believe that our knowledge, our peace, is a threat to their power." Jace nodded, his mind working quickly. He had heard of the Zelvorians before. They were known for their ruthless pursuit of power, willing to conquer any world they could. They had a long history of war and conflict, and it seemed that Eloria was their next target. "What can we do?" Jace asked, his voice determined. Liara looked at him, her expression softening for a moment. "You are not from Eloria," she said quietly. "This is not your fight." Jace shook his head, his jaw tightening. "I may not be from Eloria, but I'm not going to sit by while you're in danger. I came here to learn, yes, but I've also come to respect your people. I won't leave you to face this alone." Liara stared at him for a long moment, and for a brief instant, Jace could see the faintest trace of emotion in her eyes, something that spoke of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. But before he could interpret it, she turned back to the map, her expression hardening. "We will fight," Liara said, her voice strong again. "We will not allow the Zelvorians to take our home." The officials began to discuss their strategy, speaking quickly and with great urgency. Jace watched them, still processing the weight of what was happening. Eloria wasn't just a peaceful planet. It was a beacon of hope in a galaxy filled with conflict, and now it was under threat. Jace couldn't stand by and do nothing. After what felt like hours of heated discussions, the strategy was set. The Elorians had a sophisticated defense system, one that didn't rely on conventional weapons, but on technology and energy shields. The Zelvorians, however, had developed advanced weaponry that could break through Eloria's defenses. It was clear that the planet was in danger and every second counted. Liara turned to Jace as the meeting ended. "I must prepare for the coming battle," she said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. "Stay here. I will need your help, but not now." Jace nodded, but as she left the room, he felt a surge of determination. He wasn't going to stay behind. He wasn't going to let her face this threat alone. He had already seen the strength in her, the way she commanded respect and admiration from her people. But now, he had to show that he was willing to fight by her side. He left the war room and made his way to the armory. It was a large, well-equipped facility, full of advanced technology Jace had never seen before. The Elorians didn't use traditional weapons like guns or missiles. Instead, they had energy-based tools and devices designed to incapacitate, not kill. But Jace knew that the Zelvorians wouldn't hesitate to use lethal force, and if he was going to stand by Liara, he needed to be prepared. As he entered the armory, a guard approached him, his eyes wary but respectful. "You are human," the guard said, his voice thick with an accent Jace hadn't heard before. "You are not authorized to wield our weapons." "I'm not here to fight with your weapons," Jace replied. "I just want to help. I've trained in basic combat on Earth. I want to protect your people." The guard studied him for a moment, his violet eyes scanning Jace's face as though evaluating his sincerity. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, follow me." Jace followed the guard through the armory, where they stopped in front of a row of energy shields. The shields were thin, transparent panels that could generate a protective force field strong enough to withstand most attacks. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. "This is what you will use," the guard said, handing Jace one of the shields. "It is not a weapon, but it will protect you." Jace took the shield, his fingers brushing against the cool surface. It felt strange, but comforting in a way. He had never used anything like it before, but he had a feeling it would be enough. "Thank you," Jace said, turning to leave the armory. As he walked back to the main hall, he thought about what Liara had said. This wasn't his fight, but in his heart he knew it was. He had come to Eloria to learn, yes, but he had also come to understand. And now he understood something more. The peace that the Elorians had fought so hard to maintain was worth fighting for, and if he could help protect it, he would. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Elorian soldiers, technicians, and civilians worked together to prepare for the Zelvorians' arrival. Jace moved through the palace, assisting where he could, offering help to anyone who needed it. He may not have been an Elorian, but he was determined to be part of this fight. Finally, Liara returned to the war room. Her face was calm, but there was an unmistakable sadness in her eyes. She had seen the gravity of the situation, and though she remained strong for her people, Jace could tell she was carrying the weight of it all alone. "I'm ready," Jace said, stepping up to her side. Liara looked at him, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. "Stay close," she said softly, "and do not hesitate." Jace nodded. He was ready. As they made their way to the palace's command center, the tension in the air grew thicker. Outside, the sound of ships approaching echoed through the palace walls. The Zelvorians were almost here. And so Jace found himself standing at the precipice of something far greater than he had ever imagined. A fight for peace, a fight for Eloria, and a fight that would change the galaxy forever. The sound of approaching enemy ships filled the air, a low hum that rattled the very ground beneath Jace's feet. As he stood next to Princess Liara, he could feel the tension rising. The palace had transformed from a peaceful sanctuary into a war room. Elorian soldiers, technicians, and civilians were working in unison, their faces set with determination. The air was thick with anticipation. The Zelvorians were coming, and Eloria's peaceful existence was about to be tested in ways it never had before. Jace had never imagined that he would find himself in the middle of a conflict like this. Just a few days ago, he had arrived on Eloria to learn about the culture, to observe its peaceful ways. Now he was standing beside the princess, preparing for battle. It was a far cry from what he had expected, but something inside him had shifted. He couldn't just stand by. Not when everything he had come to admire about Eloria was at risk. As the sounds of the approaching fleet grew louder, Liara turned to him. Her expression was as calm as ever, but Jace could see the strain in her eyes. She was the leader now, the protector of her people, and the weight of that responsibility was heavy. "Stay close to me," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with an underlying urgency. "We will face them together." Jace nodded, his grip tightening around the energy shield the Elorian guard had given him. He wasn't sure how much help he would be, but he knew that he couldn't let Liara face this alone. His heart was racing, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He had no training, no experience in warfare. But he had something the Zelvorians didn't. He had the will to fight for something worth protecting. The palace was alive with movement as the soldiers prepared for the assault. Elorian commanders were giving orders, technicians were activating energy shields, and civilians were being ushered to safety. It was a well-oiled machine, but the urgency of the situation was evident in the speed at which everything was happening. The Zelvorians weren't here to negotiate. They were here to take what they wanted by force. Jace followed Liara through the command center, where the holographic map displayed a real-time view of the incoming attack. Red dots blinked ominously, indicating the Zelvorians' position as their ships closed in on Eloria's orbit. Liara stood at the center of the room, surrounded by her closest advisors and military leaders, her presence commanding respect and authority. "We have limited time," Liara said, her voice clear and commanding. "The Zelvorians will land in less than an hour. We need to make sure our defenses are ready." One of the commanders stepped forward, a tall Elorian with silver hair and a stern expression. "Our energy shields are active, but they won't hold against the Zelvorian weapons for long. We need to stall them, keep them occupied until reinforcements arrive." Liara's gaze turned to the commander, her eyes filled with resolve. "We will not wait for reinforcements. We fight now." Jace stood to the side, watching as the room fell into a tense silence. He knew that Liara's words were not just for her people. She had made up her mind, and she wasn't going to back down. There was a fire in her that Jace hadn't seen before, a side of her that he hadn't known existed until now. He had always seen her as the calm, graceful princess, but in this moment, she was a warrior, unwavering, determined, and ready to protect her people at all costs. He felt a surge of admiration for her, but there was something else, too. He was more than just an observer now. He was part of this fight, and the weight of it settled heavily on his shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" Jace asked, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Liara turned to him, her gaze meeting his with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. "Stay with me," she said softly. "Help where you can. This is not just a battle for Eloria, it's a battle for all of us. We must stand together." Jace nodded, feeling the weight of her words. This wasn't just about protecting Eloria anymore. It was about something greater, something that transcended borders, species, and galaxies. It was about preserving peace, about fighting for a future where harmony could exist between all races. The Elorians had shown him a world where peace wasn't just a dream, but a reality. He couldn't let that be destroyed. The minutes ticked by like hours as the Zelvorian fleet drew closer. The hum of their ships was deafening now, filling the air with a constant, low rumble. Jace could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Every moment felt like it could be the last. Liara turned to him one last time before the final preparations were made. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that spoke volumes. "I'm glad you're here, Jace," she said quietly. Jace met her gaze, his heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something he couldn't name. "I'm not leaving," he said, his voice filled with conviction. Liara gave him a small, fleeting smile before turning back to the command center. "Then let's do this." The attack came without warning. One moment the sky over Eloria was clear, the stars shining brightly above, and the next, the ground shook as the Zelvorian ships descended onto the planet. Their massive warships hovered in the sky, casting dark shadows over the city below. The first explosion rocked the palace grounds, sending a shockwave through the air. The energy shields that had been protecting the palace flickered and then went dark, unable to withstand the force of the initial impact. Jace's heart raced as the ground trembled beneath his feet. He had never been in a battle like this before. His training on Earth had been basic, just enough to survive in a hostile environment. But here, on Eloria, the stakes were far higher. This wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting a way of life, a future that depended on peace. Liara's voice rang out through the chaos. "Deploy the energy barriers, move the civilians to the underground shelters." The Elorians were prepared, their technology allowing them to react quickly. The city's energy shields came online, and Jace could see them shimmering in the air, a protective barrier that encased the palace and surrounding areas. The Zelvorians, however, were relentless. Their ships unleashed a barrage of firepower, their weapons designed to pierce even the most advanced defenses. The sound of explosions echoed in the air, and Jace felt the ground tremble beneath him as the battle began in earnest. Liara moved with precision, directing her people with the authority of a seasoned leader. She was calm under pressure, her movements measured and deliberate. Jace stayed close to her, doing what he could to help. He wasn't trained for combat, but he could hold his ground, and he could follow her lead. As the battle raged on, Jace found himself caught in the thick of it. The Elorians fought with a grace and skill that was unmatched, their energy-based weapons lighting up the night sky. Jace stood his ground, his energy shield held tightly in his hands, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't a soldier, but he was part of this fight, and he wasn't going to back down. Liara led the charge, moving through the battlefield with a sense of purpose that inspired everyone around her. Her strength was undeniable, and Jace couldn't help but admire her even more in this moment. She was a true leader, willing to do whatever it took to protect her people. The Zelvorians were not giving up easily. Their ships unleashed wave after wave of attacks, their energy blasts tearing through the air. But the Elorians held their ground, their technology and resolve keeping them in the fight. The battle was far from over, but with Liara leading them, Jace felt a renewed sense of hope. As the first wave of Zelvorian troops landed on the surface, Jace could see them moving quickly, their soldiers clad in heavy armor and armed with advanced weaponry. The Elorians fought back fiercely, but it was clear that the Zelvorians were here to stay. Jace's grip tightened on his shield. He wasn't going to let them win, not while he still had breath in his body. The fight had just begun, but he wasn't going to stop. Not now, not ever.